Good.
Okay, today I'm going to be interviewing, and I have a couple questions. The first question is, what wars did you live through or fight in?
I lived through Korea. I was a little kid in Korea, and I fought in the Vietnam War, and that was all.
Okay.
But I was stationed in Germany when I was in the service. I was in the service 8 years, and I went in as a private, and I didn't like being a private. You did a lot of work, like KP, kitchen police they called it, and that meant you cleaned up after everybody got through eating. You had to wash the pots and the pans, and it was not a pleasant job. I had to clean the grease pit one time.
Oh, good.
Which was getting into the leftover food in a hole in the ground and cleaning it out. And it was terrible.
Fun.
So I decided I wanted to be an officer. That would be easier, not necessarily. You didn't have to get in the ground and do that. That's what the other guys did. So I applied for OCS, Officer Candidate School, and was accepted. And so I went to that and I became an officer.
So did you fight in the war?
Like infantry guy with a rifle?
Yeah.
No. I was in a maintenance battalion in Vietnam, the 725th Maintenance Battalion. We were part of the 25th Infantry Division. And things break down. Helicopters, trucks, tanks, rifles, and somebody has to fix them, and that's what we did. And I worked on the repair parts side. I got the parts. I started out, I worked on the battalion staff as a supply officer, and then I took over a helicopter maintenance company.
That's cool. Okay, and then what was the economy like during the war?
Oh, it was fine. There wasn't any, you got to figure during the war a lot of things are going because they're manufacturing the guns and the tanks and planes and things like that. So as far as the military side, it was doing well. I think the regular economy was doing fine.
Okay, and how did the war affect you personally?
Well, I left in November of '69. My first son was born in July, so he was only like 3 or 4 months old. So I had to leave him for a year. Only communication we had no cell phones then. So the only communication we had was they had something called a Mars unit, which was a radio thing, and you got to call home maybe every 3 or 4 months. I talked to my wife maybe 3 times, and other than that, we wrote letters back and forth all the time. And the news that was here that wasn't necessarily true. They talk about fake news now.
Yeah.
My wife she wrote me one time, and she was very scared because they said I was in Cu Chi, about 30 miles west of Saigon, and it was the main base for the 25th Infantry Division, and she had read in the paper that our base had been overrun, which had happened the year before I got there. And so that's what I mean by fake news. It wasn't necessarily didn't believe everything you read,
Okay, what was the atmosphere like during the wartime? Like, how was it like, actually like?
In Vietnam or here?
Like in Vietnam.
Atmosphere. Weather-wise, very hot, very humid. They had monsoons, which were rainstorms that lasted for weeks. We were wet kind of all the time, it seemed like. The worst thing was going to the bathroom, of all things. You wouldn't think that, but there were no flushing toilets. They took barrels, they cut them in half, and they put them under the seat. And you went there, and every day whoever had that duty and usually they hired Vietnamese to do this, okay? And the Vietnamese that were hired, they came in and pulled these half barrels out, poured gasoline in them, and burnt the waste. Okay, you don't think about that kind of stuff, but That's how they handled it over there. Morale-wise, everybody was fine. We were there to do a job, and you know, we all did it. And so, again, we were not, my unit was not in the fighting. So we didn't, some of the infantry, they were out in little base camps, little fire support bases, and they would be out there with this is an artillery piece right here. That's a howitzer. And that's what they had at the fire support bases, and they would be little bases out and around, and you didn't leave the base after 5 o'clock. That was against the rules. And we only lost 2 men in our whole outfit the whole year I was there. And in both cases, they left the base 5 minutes till 5 to get back to their fire support base where they were located. And they never showed up. They found them the next day, and they were both dead. And that's the bad part of it. But fortunately, I didn't know any of them, and I didn't know anybody that got killed. So I was real. I did have a guy I went to high school with that got killed over there.
Okay, the next question is, what were your thoughts on the war?
I supported it. A lot of people didn't at home. I mean, it was, you know, I thought I could see the need because communism had been, and when I went to high school, communism was the big thing. And so this was communists trying to take over another country, and we were trying to stop them. The French had tried to stop it before we got there, and then they didn't do any better than we did, really. And I know at home, but we didn't hear that much about it. We had the news every night. I mean, they didn't try to hold anything from us or anything. They had news. We had TV. The Wild Wild West was one of the shows that we watched. If y'all remember any of that, y'all probably too young for that show. MASH, of course, was around, but that was Korea. But over there, morale was good. We didn't seem to have any problems.
Okay, and then what did you do to distract yourself during the war? Like, what did you guys do for fun?
Well, there wasn't a whole lot of fun. We played cards at night, poker, and just hearts. Games you play today, we played back then. Watched TV a little bit that we could get. I actually went to school. I went to college.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I went to college at night. I took business law. There wasn't a whole lot. We worked pretty much 7 days a week, not 24 hours a day. We would work, probably from 7. We'd get up at 6 and go eat breakfast, and work from say 7 till 7 or 8 at night, sometimes like that. And then we'd go to the club and get a drink, and you know what people do today.
Okay, and the last question is, what was it like after the war?
Well, after the war, I came home. The reception was not good. You hear a lot about it now, about how bad we were treated, and that was pretty true. People didn't like. There was a lot of ill feeling here from the young people mostly. I don't know whether they just didn't want to go to war or I call it propaganda, but you know, we just weren't received well. People would ignore us. Like now, people I get complimented more on my service now than I ever have.
Yeah.
You know, thanking me for. I think the attitude really changed because. You know, we were paid while we were there, but we didn't go. I mean, I was in the service. They told me to go. I went.
Yeah.
You know, and I volunteered to go in the service. I'd been to college and hadn't done too well. Had a great time. Hadn't done too well, and that's why I was going to school at night, doing what I could. And other people did too, if you could. There was a lot of drinking. We had at the time, there was a lot of drugs, and we checked a lot of marijuana. They checked for marijuana. At that time, the drugs were LSD. And it's funny, I had to do inspections to find drugs, and we would find marijuana occasionally, but LSD was a bad thing, and LSD was liquid, and we used to throw them through magazines, and if you could see a spot that looked where like water on a magazine and it dried, that could be LSD, and we looked for it that way. I don't think I ever found any. You know, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But mostly we just worked.
Mm-hmm.
They would play baseball, sports. I hadn't thought about the fun part before. It was hard to get Budweiser beer. That was the favorite at the time. Y'all probably don't need to know all this, but it was funny because I'll tell you some funny stories in a minute. It was funny because when you got the beer, it would come in a semi truck full of Budweiser, and that was all. It may be a month or two before you saw any more. So the line would be a mile long, just wrapped around the base, with people lining up trying to get this beer.
Yeah.
So, and I thought that was funny.
That's funny.
You want to hear some funny stories?
Okay.
Well, you want to show them. This is what a base looked like. This is a small one, but they were round. Okay. Here's another picture. And this one's from the air. It's very difficult to see though, it's small. This is, I got it written on the back. This is in 1970. It's Fire Support Base Devens in the center of the picture. It's a light, kind of like sand pile. That's flying in with a helicopter. And this is our base. I think this is our base where you can see the tower. This is a Fire Base Code Trick from a helicopter in January of '70. And I'm showing you that one because that tower, we had them around our base. And I was a second lieutenant, or first lieutenant. No, I'd been promoted. I was a captain then. And periodically, everybody had to have bunker duty. And around the outside of the base was the bunkers. And that protected us at night. Otherwise, they'd come in and kill you. And so I was on bunker duty, and it was very, very, very boring. If nothing was happening, you were bored out of your mind. And so in those towers, we had people with machine guns and everything, and they would go to sleep. And so part of my job was to call them every half hour, check on them, do a comm check and make sure they were awake and all this kind of stuff. So the whole time I did it, we never had any trouble. Sometimes you could hear gunfire in the distance, but one night we had barbed wire at different levels. You'd have it far out and then closer in and closer in and closer in. And then the barbed wire, we'd had trip flares. So if somebody hit something, it would go off. So we're out there one night very bored and everything, and all of a sudden all gangbusters happened. A dog had gotten to the wire and the trip flare went off. Boom! Scared him crazy. So he's running through the wire, setting off trip flares. Boom, 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 boom. We thought we were under attack naturally. So it turned out it was a dog.
Oh my gosh, it's funny.
Yeah. And I was trying to think of. Did you want to know about anything about Agent Orange? You ever heard of that?
Isn't that the chemicals that they use?
It was a defoliant. I am 100% disabled from Agent Orange. I have heart problems. I have diabetes. I have a lung thing. We don't know where I got it. I don't have any trouble with it other than a couple times I spit up blood, but it was very light. But I went to the doctor about it, and they don't attribute that to Agent Orange yet. And I don't know how many other people have it, but I attribute it to Agent Orange because it's a form of tuberculosis. It's non-contagious, and But I didn't know I had it. There was no reason for me to have it other than I'd been over here and they used that stuff. And the only experience I ever had with it where I saw it was I was the pay officer, and we had gone into Cambodia. I don't know if y'all study Vietnam much, but we were getting attacked a lot from the country of Cambodia. So finally we just went into Cambodia, and they fought over there quite a bit. Well, in the military, the American military, they try their very best to give you hot food and to pay you on time. And so I was the pay officer, and I took off one day to pay the guys in Vietnam that were in our unit, and like a crazy, I went by myself. I was in a Jeep. I had an M16 rifle and a little .38 pistol. And I took off by myself, and I was in a lot of traffic, and everything was going fine. I got to a crossroads, and it was like this. And there were all these were, my fingers were roads. I went this way, everybody else went this way, and I was by myself. I saw one other American. He was by himself on a bulldozer, bulldozing trees down right at the border. And I saw a plane flying over on my right, and he was spraying this orange looking stuff, or pinkish look. To me, I remember it as being pinkish looking, but they call it Agent Orange. And I'm pretty sure that's what they were doing, spraying with that. And it was a defoliant to get the leaves off the trees. Any other questions?
I think that's all we have.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay, I was trying to think of any other stories.
Okay, well, thank you so much for letting me interview you, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you very much. It was a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.